Ryan, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. You're now the first person I've talked to about this movie that is not someone that I knew during the era of which it was being made, because I was the person who like went from the East. It's weird to call it UCB East because we all called it the Beast.
Yeah.
But went from the Beast to Hell's Kitchen and like was a fan of from Jar Jar on and all of that kind of stuff. So to see that almost sort of as a time capsule now with this, even though it like there's way too much to get into with the George Lucas talk show. What for you was the both joy and struggle of like putting the spotlight on both Connor and that era of this show, especially now given what it kind of looks like for the show itself.
Yeah. The time capsule really is it in a nutshell, right? Where this was also our intention from the start is there was this sort of underground show that I was a huge fan of. I had found Connor through the Gethard show, and I was looking for some sort of project that would be very different from my last project, and just kind of wanted to know what made Connor tick. Like, why is this lovable madman doing it? For at that point, it was 5 years, which to
Mhm.
me seemed like a long time to do a show pretending to be George Lucas. And we started when it had moved to Hell's Kitchens when we started filming, but we had all of Patrick, Cotnor's archival of the UCB East era, and I sort of became a fan during the UCB East era myself, and was just interested in how the dynamic changed a little bit when it went from like the midnight show to like the 30 or 7 p.m. show. And then obviously we recorded for a whole, we filmed through all of 2019 and then the first few months of 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and we were sort of taking stock for a while. Like, what all of this era do we tell? What's part of the story and what isn't? And ultimately, we decided that we still wanted to tell, we set out to tell a very specific story about uh, the George Lucas talk show and the portrait of an artist behind it. And the more we got deeper into the weeds of the sort of Twitch live streaming era, the more we kept getting away from our sort of like thematic drive and the principles.
Mhm.
Um, we realized that could be a whole other, maybe it should be a whole other documentary. And so we wound up, sort of ending without giving too much away, sort of almost like an epilogue,
Mhm.
is kind of how we treat it now. With it's still the same show. There's still the heart is the same, the core is the same, but now it's this huge audience, and now they can get all these other people that maybe they couldn't have gotten if it were just a small New York thing.
Mhm.
Um, and now it's a hybrid of the two. It's like they're taking it all over the place now, and it's kind of a third thing. So part of that decision too is that so much of what the guys did during the Twitch era is documented really well. It's all up there. It's all anyone can see the what thousands and thousands of hours of them, doing the Twitch show. And so we just felt like, okay, this time period from 2019 up until that happened, no one really got to see. And I think
Mhm.
it's the part that excited me the most. This little special thing that almost like people kind of wink at each other and say, like, they're almost like keeping it hush, like they don't want to ruin it. And that's sort of the exciting bit for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is very funny for me to watch this because you can see the progression of my hair because I'm in it with my blonde hair, and then I'm in it when I dyed my hair brown right before the pandemic. And then I'm like, oh, cool. You can just see exactly where I was at what time in this because it's like me and my best friend, who's my roommate. You see
Mhm.
us during the like one of my favorite George Lucas talk show moments, which is when he sprayed the P. Williams cologne and took out an entire room at New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
But
Can I just tell you that's one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is you laughing, which is why we put it in the trailer as well. Like it's just such a pure, unbridled joy slash horror moment, which is like the George Lucas talk the George Lucas talk show in a nutshell is like being playfully horrified slash deeply enjoying what's going on.
Well, thank you. It made me and Leah, who everyone on the team also knows, but me and Leah very happy. We're like, we're at the trailer. There's us.
Yeah.
But it does make me ask, like, you got there are so many moments that, like, when I talked to Patrick, him and I are friends. We could have gone on for hours talking about like which moments that we wish were in there. But there were still like so many that I was like, oh yeah, it was wild that this one didn't get it. And like
Mhm.
thinking of all of the stuff we've seen, what for you was like the catalyst of like, okay, no, we're not including this, but we will highlight like this moment.
Yeah, as much as I said I'm a fan, which is absolutely true,
Mm,
of Connor and the George Lucas talk show, when we took upon this project, the guiding light was kind of a joke, but it's also kind of true of like, what would George Lucas do? Which it really was a joke at first. And then the more we got into production, I was like, no, what, as somebody who's creating something, pretending I'm in Uncle George's, seat for a second and having to make the prequels, what I admire about him is he just did what he wanted to see in the world. He
hmm
did not do fan service to the way that people would have wanted. And I think there's something admirable about that, the same way that, Ryan Johnson, his The Last Jedi is my favorite of the Disney sequels.
hmm
And it's because he did what he thought the movie deserved to be. And so that's kind of just like, as selfish as it sounds, it was like, I think I can make the best movie if I put the fans out of my mind, if I put even Patrick and Connor and Griffin out of my mind, not make it what they want, but like me, make it for myself for when I was, in 2017 and first stumbling across this show and just was a fan. What would
hmm
I have wanted to see? And it turned out I really wanted to see Portrait of Connor. And so we had that balance to strike of, you need the context of what is this crazy thing? What is this George Lucas talk show? So you can even understand why we're interweaving, Connor's life through it. If we didn't understand what the George Lucas talk show was, none of it would work.
hmm
And so that was the constant challenge, but ultimately it made the movie tighter, because if it wasn't really explaining who Connor is and why he does it, and we'll never really know. It's almost like we're just throwing out theories.
hmm
Um, then it didn't quite deserve to be in the final, 90 minutes, was how we kind of wrapped our heads around it.
Yeah, because it is like I said this to Patrick. I was like, oh, when I saw, Connor as George singing The Man Who Sold the World to Disney, and I saw JD standing in the wings, I was like, do the labyrinth, let the whole labyrinth pit show. But it was like,
Yeah.
I do like that those moments get to live within our memories as fans, and yet the people who didn't get to see it, like, I'm sorry, but we like that is like kind of our George Lucas,
Yeah.
which has been so fascinating for me because like I have been saying I read this one letterbox comment that just like made me angry because they said, "Oh, I liked it, but like this isn't the show that like gave me a community. Like it's not my George Lucas." And I felt very like, "No, but it's mine. Like it gave me my friends,
Mm.
me my community. Like just because you have a different approach doesn't mean it's better." And it's so cheesy to be that angry about it, but it was like this era did give me all my friends I have. It was something we did
Mhm.
every month. And it was so nice to kind of be taken back there. Were you guys always, because I know like my friends are in it, like I see their little faces and the things that they've said. Was it always your intention to kind of have quote unquote us be that much of a part when we get into the George Lucas talk show of it all?
Absolutely. That was something we knew from the start, that the fans are what make it, work. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's kind of a call and response show with bingo and other things that like we just had a hint at. It's just like I kept two things in mind. Like, the fans are the community that make this work. They're the people who showed up even when it was like terrible weather and it was a basement show or a midnight show. The energy that people brought to the room is what made it. The people who dressed up in the Ron Howard costume parade, stuff like that. That's the feeling of the show to me. And we kept trying to figure out how can we capture the emotion of it, even if we're not showing every possible detail. And so it's kind of the same. That's kind of the same approach we used even with. I loved how much of a community, and what we call them, the chat rats and the Georgie
Hmm.
Porgies. They're some of the funniest people on the planet are just fans of this show. And so again, we tried to capture the spirit of acknowledging them rather than trying to figure out which 10 funny things could we put on screen. Like it was just almost too monumental a task to cover the entire history of it. And so again, we just kind of, for efficiency and to make sure we're telling a good story too,
Hmm.
because not only did we want this to be a time capsule, but we also wanted it to be, a good story, well told, that anyone could come to this and be like, what? Yeah, there's the title George Lucas, like, is in the title. I don't understand. What is this? And then by the end of it, hopefully feel like, oh, that was a little more moving than I thought it was going to be. That was like kind of our goal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we learned, I mean, slowly everyone was learning more and more about Connor, like throughout the years. Like I truly do. My favorite part about the George Lucas talk show was whenever Connor had to acknowledge that he was like me, George Lucas, like making clear, like, I know I'm not George Lucas, but I'm talking as George Lucas
Hmm.
in this
Hmm.
moment because it was some offensive, like some crazy thing
Yeah.
that George had said. But it's like within those little moments, you learned a lot about who Connor is, and like
Hmm.
then obviously Dead Eyes and all of these things. But one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is when you go to his hometown and his mom pointed out my favorite thing that used to happen at the George Lucas talk show, but like without her realizing it, I think, which was who was going to go to this and think it was a comedian and not actual George Lucas, because that happened all of the time. And because I was an
Hmm.
intern and would go and talk to my friends, and some lady would be mad because George Lucas was not there. But when you got to go home and like see, the almost exact connection that his dad had with his own show versus how Connor runs George Lucas, and just like going to that store and like finding all of these toys and highlighting how he genuinely just loves Star Wars and like Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
What for you of that section was kind of the most fascinating thing to learn about Connor with his family involved?
Yeah, we went there because I thought it was a really fascinating angle that his parents are so supportive, which is a funny thing to say because but it's true that like most comedians they've had kind of a not great childhood and have
Mhm.
a dark sense of humor. And sure, Connor has a dark sense of humor, but his parents were just always encouraging from the start. And that was sort of the impetus is like, okay, let's see how do they interact, what's their dynamic, but to get the parallels was not what we were expecting. I
Mhm.
knew that his dad did a show that was like Mr. Rogers-esque, called Showtime, but I did not expect that parallel between his dad painted the sets. His dad asked his friends, "Can you help me make this a thing?" in between doing other things, and Connor pointing out, like, sometimes things are not meant for everybody. It's just meant for our little small town.
Mhm.
That was really special to me. It was such a clear link. You don't normally get in real life, you don't normally get those sort of poetic parallels, like this equals this. And I just thought that was really lovely. And especially the way his mom and dad sort of like jockey each other as performers was
Yeah.
really funny to me. I'm not going to spoil his mom's one of the best jokes in the movie, um, but the support slash comedy from the two of them was just really touching to me.
Yeah. And I do have to ask for like my final question because, like I said, me and Patrick went back and forth being like, oh, remember when John Hamm was there? Remember when this happened? Remember like Anthony Atamanuik as Sir Alec Guinness? And we were just like listing these moments that are like very near and dear to our hearts because we sat there every week and watched it. And I have a Yoda that I fought for. Like I was like, I want this Yoda, just like fought him to give it to me. But for you, when you were like researching and going through all of these shows and trying to figure it out, was there a moment that it didn't make it into the movie that you were just like, but I am obsessed with this moment and wished that you could highlight it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the moments was with Connor,
Mm,
and I'm gonna find a way to get it in the bonus features. Maybe it's one of those that means more to me than everybody else. We'll see. It was a day in November of 2019. We were filming all day, and at the end of it, he was really punchy. Everyone was really punchy, and he was almost like yelling at me like, Ryan, why are you asking me these questions? These like hard questions, like about mortality and what he thinks about the afterlife and death. I was just sort of like anything that I could, sort of like provoke him a little bit in a fun way. At the end, we had that sort of like back and forth, this like
Hmm.
fun banter. And I asked him about the joy of creating things. Would you say that it's um, truly an important thing in your life to be a creator of things? And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, can you repeat that back to me? Can you give me more context? He's like, I don't think I can. It's going to be that thing where on 60 Minutes, they ask the interviewee to repeat it back, and it just sounds like they're parroting. And he just got really punchy, and we all just started laughing over like, I can hear you say it, Ryan, but no, I can't say something back to you. Those are some of my favorite moments, as well as this would never make it in because there are certain things that Connor literally refused to shoot. And so
Hmm.
by its very nature, we don't have them because he got really into documentary ethics, which I'm all about. That's
Hmm.
fantastic. I consider myself a very ethical filmmaker as well. But I would ask him, could you, put that dish away? We're just trying to show you around your apartment. He's like, I already washed the dish. I'm not going to wash it again. So he really took it to an extreme. Like, you better catch me doing what I do in my real life, or you're not going to get it. And it
Hmm.
actually made us better filmmakers. It made us better improvisers. We had to capture things in real time because there wasn't going to be, like a second chance.
Oh my God, I love it. Now I'm like, I want to see a bonus feature of you talking about mortality with him and then cut to his funeral that happened at UCB. Because
Yeah.
I think about that funeral all of the time because it is just genuinely very funny that he had a funeral for his 40th
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah. We had an ongoing um, kind of joke that like he's a long-term uh, pessimist and short-term optimist, and I'm the opposite. Whereas like short-term I'm a pessimist, long-term I'm an optimist, and he just kept talking about, you might as well have a clock in the corner of this film to when you think I'm gonna die. I was just like, no, we're not gonna do that. But there was, yeah, in a movie about somebody pretending to be George Lucas, there was a lot of like mortality and legacy and why do we do the things we do, and that's what interests me. Just I'm a curious person in the human condition, and Connor is both a funny person on stage, but also just a really funny person in his personal life too.
Yeah. I love it so much. I do have one request for bonus features and things.
Yeah,
If you would please put the one man show of Watto in that bonus feature because it is the last thing I've ever seen at UCB,
yeah,
just for
yeah.
me. Because
We don't quite have it recorded as nicely as anything else. I think it's just on Patrick's phone because we knew we were never going to be able, for copyright reasons, ever get it in the movie. So yeah, I will put in that request to Patrick. Like, let's see what the best version of it. Because yeah, I was there that day too, and it was the last thing I ever saw in Hell's Kitchen.
yeah, truly was like I when I stopped and thought about that during the pandemic, I was like, the last thing I saw at UCB was Griffin Newman doing a one man show dressed as Watto. And at one point, I think he sings "I Dreamed a Dream." It was like
Yeah.
some song from Les Mis,
Hmm.
but I was like, "What's going on? Like, why are we here?" But I love the movie a lot as someone who
Me
like
too.
that. This show still means a lot to me, and that era meant a lot to me. And I can't wait for people who either weren't there or were there get to see kind of just the journey of both Connor and the George Lucas talk show.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're getting us all individually and gonna put something together. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this all looks like when you're done with it too.
I know, I'm very excited. I'm very nervous because I'm like, man, I know these people. They can be like, Rachel, the hell? Because I
It'll
had
be
to put
great.
in Patrick's, like, if you haven't noticed, we're actually friends. Like,
Yeah.
this is why we're talking in like shorthand about things.
Hmm.
But thank you for talking with me. I can't
Thank
wait. You
you.
guys are bringing it to New York, right?
Yes, yeah. We'll make sure everyone knows exactly when and where all the premieres are. The video on demand stuff, all
Mhm.
the different potential options to see it. We will let you know as soon as we're allowed to do so.
Yeah, because I know most of, if not all of my friends who are still here are gonna want to go to the New York one.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
But thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thanks. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.